Today we're going to talk about visualizing rational numbers, fractions, decimals, and percentages. We're going to talk about the why of how these things work, as well as the how. A fraction is a numerical quantity that is not a whole number. For instance, 3/4, 2/3, 15/6. Those are all fractions. An equivalent fraction is two fractions or more that have the same value but look different. So 2/3, that's the same as 4/6. That's also the same as 10/15. A percentage, per means out of, cent means 100. Like there's 100 cents in a dollar. There's 100 years in a century. Percentage is part out of 100. In other words, the numerator of a fraction whose denominator is 100. For example, 62% is the same as 62 over 100. Another percentage could be 456%. A percent doesn't have to be two numbers. It could be more than two numbers. It could also be a smaller percentage, 0.025%. Those are all percentages. What fraction does each picture represent? This is the why of what fractions look like. Fractions are with the fraction bar, of course, and the denominator is how many pieces in one whole. The numerator is the number shaded. So in this one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 shaded. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total pieces. In this one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces in one whole. So the denominator is 4. But now when we count our shaded pieces, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 shaded. When the numerator is bigger than the denominator, this is called an improper fraction. Another way we could write this is there's 2 wholes and then there's 1 shaded out of 4. So 2 and 1/4. This is called a mixed number. These are equivalent. Sometimes it's easier to see it when we write it as a mixed number. Most of the time it's easier to use if we write it as an improper fraction, because a lot of the operations we do, we have to make the mixed numbers into improper fractions before we can do anything with them. These last two, the pictures look very similar, only this one has a bar in it. So first of all, let's count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have 1, 2, 3 shaded. So this one is 3/5. This one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shaded. These two, notice the size of this outer box is the same and the amount shaded is the same. These two are actually equivalent fractions. And this is how we find equivalent fractions, by just dividing up what one of them is. So we could, if we had the line here like this is very similar to this. We could divide this one into like that, where we would have 4 vertical lines. Then we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 shaded out of 20. Those 3 are all equivalent fractions. Now we're going to talk about percentage. Remember, we just said that the percentage is the numerator when the denominator is 100. So let's count our boxes and see how many boxes we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then if we count vertically, in each row there's 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So this is 100 little boxes. So that's our denominator of our fraction. And then we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 41, 42, 43. We have 43 little boxes shaded. So that is 43%. These, the entire bar is 100%. So we have to determine what percentage of each bar is shaded. If we have 100%, and we're dividing it into 2, that's 50%. So when it's divided into 2, it's 50%. This one is 100%. And we're dividing it into 4. So that's 25%. So each of these blocks is 25%. This one is 100% and we're dividing into 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 100% divided into 5, that's 20%. And last, we have 100%, and we divided it into 3. This is the same as 1/3, which is 33.3 repeating. We need that repeating bar percent. This is one of the ones we will use again and again. So if you don't know it as a fact, then you're going to have to memorize that one. So these are split differently. So let's see how to do this one. Remember, this part and this part were the same size. And from our last example, we know that this was 50%. So this part is also 50%, and it's divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 50% divided into 5. So that means each of the smaller divisions is 10%. So now we have 50, 60, 70. So this shaded amount is 70%. This one, we have 1, 2, 3. This is the same size, 4, 5. When we divided 100 into 5, each of the blocks was worth 20%. Now we know that this part is also 20%, but it's divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 20, and we're dividing into 5, so that's 4% each. So this one is 4%. So now when we count, we have 20, 40, 60, 64, 68, 72. The shaded portion on this one is 72%. Notice these two are the same size. The whole block is the same size, and this one's a little bit bigger than this one, so 72% does make sense. This one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 divisions, so that means that each of the bigger divisions is 25%, and then this is also 25%, but we divide it into 5. So 25% divided into 5 is equal to 5%. So then we have 5% here, and we can count 25, 50, 55, 60. So this shaded block is 60%. This last one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're 20%, so they're 20% each. So that means we have 20, 40, 60. This one is also 60%. These two bars, both are 100%, and look at, they're shaded exactly the same amount. So this is two different ways to represent 60%. It just depends on how you want to divide it up. Now, each of these, we have 100% plus more shaded. So our final answer is going to have 100 and something percentage. So the first thing we have to do is look at what our 100% is divided into. So looking at our 100, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 100 divided into 5 is 20% for each block. So now we have 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140. So this one is 140%. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4 divided into 100, so each division is 25%. This is also 25%, and it's divided into 5, so the little ones are each worth 5%. So counting what's shaded, we have 25, 50, 75, 100, 105, 110, 115. This one is 115%. This one we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. So that's 20%. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 20, 40. This is 140%. Notice the first one and the third one are the same percentage and they're divided the same, but they look different because our 100% here is bigger than our 100% here. So make sure you pay attention to how things are drawn. This last one is 100% divided into 1, 2, 3. We talked about that earlier. That means each block is worth 33.3 repeating percent. So then we have 100, 133.3 repeating, 166.6 repeating. Remember, you have to have that repeating bar. So now we want to draw some diagrams to represent each of the following fractions. When you draw fractions or percentages, percentages will normally do in that strip. You could do a big box of 10 by 10, but that gets a little cumbersome. So normally we're going to be drawing the percentages in the strip. That way when we start working with percentages and working with other things and use strip diagrams, it's a little bit easier to use. The fractions you can draw as a rectangle, as a circle, as any thing you would like. I find it easiest to draw it as rectangles because then I end up getting closest to even amounts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we need to add one more, 5. All of your boxes should be about the same size, and then you want to color it in. So then we'll color it in. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4/5. 4/3, we're going to do a box divided into 3, but then because we need, it's 4/3 and there's only 3 here, we need another box divided into 3. Remember, we talked that when this number is bigger than this number, when the numerator is bigger than the denominator, it's an improper fraction. So then we can color in 1, 2, 3, 4. 65%. So the first thing you want to do when you're figuring out your percentages in your strip diagram, we can draw a strip diagram and say that that's 100%. You could divide the 100% into 10 and then divide 1 into half, or make 20 divisions and they're each worth 5, but that's really hard to read. So instead, let's figure out if we can divide it into 25s or 20s. So if we divide it into 25s, we have 25 plus another 25, that's 50, plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. 25, 50, 55, 60, 65. So remember, to get the 25, we had to divide our block into 4. And then to get the 5s, we had to divide one of the 25s into 5. And when you're dividing, if you want 5 blocks, you need 4 divisions. Now we can color 25, 50, 55, 60, 65. We also could have done it as 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 5. If we do that, I'm going to try and make it the same size. To get our 20 percentages, we needed to divide into 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divisions. And then one of the 20% to get it into 5, we had to divide into 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now if we color that one, we have 20, 40, 60, 65. Notice these, it's a little off because it's drawing, not exact, but they're approximately shaded the same amount, which they should be. So 135%, we're going to have 100%, and then we're going to add a little bit more. 135% could be 25 plus 25 plus 25 plus 25 plus, so that's 25, 50, 75, 100, 25 plus 5 plus 5. So we have 25, 50, 75, 100, 25, 125, 130, 135. So if we divide this one into 4, and then divide our last one into 5, and shade, we have 25, 50, 75, 100, and I forgot an extra one. Notice I tried to keep it about the same size, so now we have 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 130, 135. It's a really good idea to always check and make sure when you're done drawing and done doing it that you add it up and make sure you have what you're supposed to. Otherwise you make mistakes like I just did, which is okay. Converting fractions and percentages without a calculator. So a percentage is our amount over 100. We know that this decimal number is 46 hundredths, so we can write this as 46 over 100, which turns out then that our percentage is just going to be 46%. For a fraction in simplest form, we have 46 over 100. We can divide numerator and denominator by 2. Notice I did 2 over 2. These are both even numbers, that's why we can divide them both by 2. And we get 23 over 50. These two don't have any more common factors, so that's simplest form. So 23 over 50. 65% is 65 over 100. So that we can write as 6,500. So 0.65. To write that as a fraction in simplest form, we have 65 over 100, and each of those can be divided by 5. We just did 100 divided by 5 was 20. 65 divided by 5 is 13. So our fraction in simplest form is 13 over 20. Now we have 16 over 25. To get a percentage, we want it as something over 100. So we want to multiply now to get 100 in the denominator. If we multiply by 4, we get 100, so when we multiply the denominator, we need to multiply by the numerator by the same thing. That's how we find equivalent fractions, by multiplying by 1, or the same thing, numerator and denominator. And then 64 times 4 is 64. So our percentage is 64%. And that means our decimal number is 0.64%. 16 over 25, they don't have any common factors. This is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. This is 5 times 5, so this is actually our fraction in simplest form also. 3/5, we want to have another fraction, an equivalent fraction. Since we're finding percentages, let's try to find something as something over 100. To get 5 multiplied by 20 is equal to 100, so let's multiply by 20 over 20. 3 times 20 is 60. So our percentage is 60%, because that's the numerator, and our decimal number is 0.60, because it's 60 over hundreds, or 600ths. Our fraction for 1.52 is 152 over 100. So that means it's 152%. Now we need to find out what 152 over 100 is in simplest form. So 152 divided by 100. If we divide them both by 2, because they're both even numbers, we get 50 and, let's see, 76. That's still not a simplest form because they can both be divided by 2 again. So let's divide them both by 2 again. And we get 38 over 25. That is simplest form, so then we have 38 over 25. Notice for all of these, we went back and forth here, so let's try this. This isn't a very nice way to write a fraction, but it'll help when we figure out what we want to do. So we have 0.0028 divided by 100. So we can move, remember when we had a number divided by something, we moved the decimal to the left. So that means we're going to have 0.00028 for our decimal number. And then our fraction in simplest form, we can move this over, because then this is going to be 28 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 28 over 10,000. So that would be 28 over 10,000, which is the same as 7 over 2,500. Our last one is, this is 45 over 1 with 4 zeros, but we want it with 2 zeros, so we actually want to have the decimal point here to find our percentage. Because we're dividing both of these numbers by 100, we have 0.45%. And let's not forget that 0 placeholder. And now this is 9 over 2,000, because we can divide numerator and denominator by 9. This chart will take practice, but once you practice and practice, it'll get easier. That's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow.